how can you surrender and let go and become detached from the outcome and the stuff that you seek after in your life? How can you do that and still have the things that you want come into your life? How does that paradox work? One of the things that I have learned in my own speaking is to let go of the outcome, to be unconcerned with the reaction and what's in it for me, and indeed to just surrender. And in my meditation before I speak, I always repeat the mantra endlessly over and over again, and I find myself doing this more and more in my life, and something that I urge you to do. I ask the question, how may I serve? Just, how may I serve? How may I serve? How may I serve? There are 1,000 people there. How may I serve them? It's like getting the focus off of what's in it for me and how do I look and whether I say the right thing and whether people like what I say and whether they buy things that I have or whatever. And instead, like letting all of that go. Just letting that go. And getting the focus of your life, the centeredness of your life on this business of serving. And the irony of it is that when you get to that point where you're able to do it and let go of that outcome, all of the stuff that you chased after and worked so hard for and figured you had to have back here begins to chase after you and show up in your life. And it isn't you're no longer on the treadmill. It's like a surrendering. And so that's what I do when I come on stage. And it's almost as if God says to me, it's like, as long as you stay on purpose, you'll never stumble. And you'll know what to say. And when you get off of that, and you shift your alignment away from that, then you won't be able to do what you're doing. And the same thing happened in the writing of this Real Magic. For the first time in my life, I experienced what I have come to call automatic writing, where I left home and went off to Maui and sat down and in 8 weeks' time just produced this book without any struggle whatsoever, not one moment of struggle. And it just seemed to be there, and it seemed to flow. And I can type, like when I sit down and type a letter or a contract or anything that I might have to put out on a typewriter, I'm one of these kind of typists. And I just look around. I can do it rather quickly, but I have never had the formal training in typing. But when I write at this little typewriter, I can go along and close my eyes and write at 70 and 80 words a minute when you get into that automatic. And I can't tell you how I do that, because I had completely let go. And I wasn't concerned with whether the editors liked it, how it came out, whether or not it was a bestseller, whether people were going to buy it, whether the reviews were going to be. Nothing. It was like very, very peaceful. And it's a very peaceful place that I'm asking you to look at and get to in your own life.
I learned to do it about 10 years ago when I really honed this, and that was when I was speaking in Houston. There were about 3,500 people who had all paid a lot of money to come and hear me, and it was an evening with Wayne Dyer. And I had all my notes all arranged in exactly the way I wanted to, and everything was just exactly perfect. I was backstage doing the pacing that you do before you go on, and the meditating and the right. breathing, and just getting yourself relaxed and your sort of divine guidance that you're seeking. And I realized that I didn't have my notes. They were gone.
Yes.
And they were back in the hotel room, which was 30 minutes away, and I was going on in 10 minutes. So I walked out on stage without any notes for the first time, and I surrendered. In that 10-minute period of time, I just said, all right, you know what you're doing, and you know how to do it, and you're good at this, and you're here for a reason, and there are 3,501 people in this room, and you're the one who's speaking, and 3,500 have paid to come and hear you. There must be a reason for that, and so get on purpose, get on purpose. Get off of your outcome, get off of how well you do, get off of how much money you're being paid, get off of all of that, and get on to what are you here for?
Yeah.
and you're here to improve the quality of life for somebody else. That's all you can do. When you leave this planet, the measure of your life won't be in what you accumulated. It will be in what you gave. Since you can't get anything anyway, it's in giving. So I surrendered, and that was the beginning for me of surrendering. I've never used notes since in my life. It's not that I'm not prepared. I meditate before, and I know what I want to do.
See, what you have to learn is that I read a wonderful line when I was down in Australia by an actress who was talking, and she concluded it with, she said, if you want to make God laugh, tell her your plans. See, God's plan works, essentially, and yours doesn't. Basically. It's like becoming a spiritual being really means shifting away from your plans and allowing yourself into this divine perfection.
Everything, remember, has a dharma. Every creature, every rose, and every human being has a dharma. You're already fulfilling it physically. You're already in the bodies that you were intended to be in. Remember what I said before, it is not about where you are, it's about what direction you're headed. And as long as you know you're heading in the direction of staying here in meaning. Now, this concept of a calling, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Inspiration, in Spirit. And the subtitle is called Your Ultimate Calling. So I'm going to introduce a word here to help you to identify your calling. And that word is passion. And it doesn't make any difference to me whether that passion has anything to do with making a living, or it's a part of the DOT, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. What is it that you find passion about? And the only condition I place on it is that it is in alignment with God or with your source. All right? So that your passion, if your passion is about killing other people, for example, if your passion is about stealing, if your passion is about, I often said that there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One of the ways to have the tallest building in town, always, is to go around and knock down anybody else's building when they start getting taller than yours. So as soon as they get up, if you're at the 44 floors and they get to 43, 44, you just go over and you put some explosives in there and you just blow it up. And you say, I have the tallest building in town. And this is, by the way, our collective ego. This is what we do in our society and in our world, and which is about, if you really want to know my passion and my calling, it's about shifting the entire consciousness of this planet before I leave it. And that's why the film titled The Shift is so significant to me, because I know that if I can get 10 million people to watch that film, The Shift, if I can get 10 million people in America and Canada to watch that film, that we reach something called pi, 3.1416, remember? And if you can get 3.1416% of a population to align, the rest of it's called a critical mass in physics. You reach what is called phase transition. And if you align enough people or electrons or subatomic particles up and align them in a certain way in an energy field, and you reach what they call the 100th monkey, when you reach that point, all the rest of the electrons or the people in that energy field begin to align as well. And we have aligned ourselves collectively with a consciousness that allows for people to knock down other people's buildings. The other way to have the tallest building in town is to always work on your own building and not be concerned with anybody else's building or what anyone else out there is doing, or being consumed with trying to compete with or win or defend. To listen to your calling. So your calling is the thing within you that has your attention, that has your passionate attention. And it doesn't make any difference whether it makes sense to anybody else. It's the thing that you feel inside of you that you're here for. It's Mr. Holland in Mr. Holland's opus. And here's the secret, here's the thing that I learned, that it's the presence of the passion. That when you have the presence of the passion within you for what it is that you feel is your calling, everything else will take care of itself. That is an indication that you have God within you and guiding you. The word enthusiasm and theos, iasm, translates to the God within in Greek. The God within. When you are enthusiastic about something, anything, when you have that kind of internal knowing that this is what I'm doing, and sometimes you have to, that Shakespeare's, he wasn't just a great writer, he was an incredible philosopher. Probably the most famous lines from Shakespeare are from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. And that's a very profound question. But what follows that is much more profound. He said, after to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the minds of men to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and thus by opposing end them. You have to ask the question, and that's what this program is about, and that's what the movie is about, and that's what the book is about, and that's what all of it is about. To be or not to be. Am I going to be who I came into this world to be, and there's something inside of me that has always been calling me to it? Or am I going to allow the slings and arrows of an outrageous fortune that has been imposed upon me by others to dictate my dharma? That's really the question. And it's a question that you can answer and respond to and live with.
Do you have a definition for crisis? Like, what is a crisis?
It's a gift. It's a gift. Everything is. It's interesting you mentioned The Power of Intention, because I wrote that book in what you would call a crisis. My wife and I had separated. I was 60 years old. You don't break up when you're 60 and have 7 kids. You do that in junior high school. And for about a year and a half, I was in the closest thing I've ever had to a depression, a clinical depression. Didn't want to get up, just couldn't figure it out. My wife had met somebody else, had moved in with them and so on. And my children encouraged me to just start writing again. They said, if you just write about it. And I really didn't want to write about it. But I had lost a lot of weight. People thought I was sick. People thought I was dying, and so on. And that book was just channeled to me. And I think in moments of crisis, what it teaches us is to become more compassionate. And compassion is at the heart of higher consciousness and enlightenment. The Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child on the planet and have them meditate on compassion for 1 hour a week, every child at the age of 5, in one generation we could eliminate all violence on earth. So that's how powerful he believes compassion to be. And I understood that because The Power of Intention was a major shift for me. I began to look less flippantly and less egotistically at the world, and came from a place of inner grace or kindness, gentleness, love, what I call divine love. So that I've always felt that it is not always so important to just be in a state of gratitude when things go well, and when you're around people that smell good and that make you feel good and that look good, but it's the low points in our life, reminders that there's something inside of us that wants to have an outpouring of love. See, even the miser who loves his gold doesn't really love his gold because of the gold. The gold is just another thing. It doesn't have any love in it. It's just an object, a metal object. The reason that the miser loves his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for the gold. And that's true of everything and everyone. It's learning to have this outpouring of love, and you don't just have to have it for people and events, but you can have it for, for this microphone, and you can have it for the cameras, and you can have it for the wall, and the table, and the chair, and everything that you encounter. And I think for me, probably one of what you would call a crisis in my life was the diagnosis of leukemia 3 years ago. And when I first heard that word leukemia has cancer all around it. Cancer has a lot of fear all around it. And even if you aren't afraid to die, which I'm not, there's no point in being afraid of that. There's no point in being afraid of anything. You still, there's that inbred sort of psychic kind of awareness that cancer and fear go together, And so it was, it turned out to be one of the great blessings in my life. I encountered John of God down in Brazil and was able to have just a magical experience around it. But what happened is when I had this healing and leukemia was taken out of my body, it wasn't so much that leukemia was taken out. What was taken out was fear. And it was replaced by love. Almost immediately, not almost, immediately after I had what they call the removal of the sutures, a week after the surgery, this remote surgery, I started feeling just love for everyone. I walked out of the room that morning, 7 days after the surgery, and I looked at my children and I just put my arms around them. I said, "You've just never looked more beautiful." And I looked at the ocean and it looked like just a big bowl of love soup. And the trees looked fluorescent, and every person that I walked by and looked at just became just objects of love. I went through a couple of quotes. One was from Valerie Hunt's book, The Infinite Mind, which is the display quote for the 6th chapter of Spiritual Solution. She said, "But I do not believe that man can perceive his godlike qualities until his field reaches higher and higher vibrations and attains a greater degree of coherency. No matter how hard we may try to receive spiritual guidance, we cannot until our fields are attuned to that vibrational system called God." Let me share that with you again. "But I do not believe that man can perceive his godlike qualities until his field reaches higher and higher vibrations and attains a greater degree of coherency." So that you can sit there in anger and in fear and in shame and all of the reactions in your life that compute to make you weak, and that will make sense shortly. And you can never come to know God according to the mind field theory that Dr. Hunt espouses and talks about, and according to a spiritual solution to every problem. Because when you're not at peace, you have sent your body into a vibrational field of energy in which you have allowed your mind to create the error or the illusion that you and God are no longer connected. And that begins to take over. And as hard as you may try, and no matter what you may do, until you can raise the frequency at which you vibrate, until you can raise the energy level at which you experience life, and move out of the lower and slower frequencies and into the higher frequencies, you will not be able to access and negotiate the presence of a spiritual solution to your problems.
You see, the intellect has trouble with this, because the intellect is the mind and the mind is the ego. If you ask most people, where is your center? Where are you centered? They will point to their head. Where do you originate from? Where is your source? Where is your ability to think and to process? They will point to their head, and they will say, it's in my brain. My brain is what makes me be able to think and be able to understand concepts and so on. If you ask a spiritual being, where is your source? Where is your center? What is it that gives you the ability to understand these great miraculous things? They will point to their heart. And so, heart consciousness is very different than head consciousness. The head consciousness is one which tries to analyze it, tries to figure it out, and has a great deal of difficulty with it because it's coming from this position of separateness. The heart is your intuition. The heart is the part of you that says, I know and I trust, and it works for me, and I don't have to convince anyone else of it. And once you have this, even prayer becomes not like, most people think of prayer as like, God is like this huge vending machine in the sky, all right? And I put in my tokens, and I behave in a certain way, and certain things are going to come to me. But there's an authentic kind of prayer that is very different than this. And this kind of prayer is one in which your prayer is in communion with God rather than separation from. I turn it over to this higher part, but it's not something that I'm ever separate from. That's trust. That kind of trust, in combination with knowing that you're no longer afraid of being God. Know ye that ye are gods, and I am in you, and you are in me, and I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. It's like this is something that we are being taught, and yet we have been conditioned almost to subscribe to another idea which says that I am not trustworthy, I am separate from, I can't do those things. That has to be transcended. You have to understand that in terms of people using it to give fear to you. And our greatest fear is the fear that we're going to be alone, that we're going to be abandoned. But this universal intelligence that is everywhere, this divine intelligence that is universal, that is in all things, how can it abandon us? Wherever we go, it's there. When you trust in that and know it without any doubt, you begin to see it everywhere. You see it in the flowers. You see it in the sunsets. You see it in your babies and in your mother-in-law. You see it in all places. And what you're doing when you see it is you're recognizing that I am worthy, and I am important, and I am significant. Yes, I am connected to God. I am what God is doing. And that's the subject of the next principle. Honoring your worthiness to receive. Thank you. If you don't believe what goes around comes around, the next time you see somebody down, just smile at them. Just say hello and be friendly toward them. And you'll see that what you send out is what comes back. Now that law of the universe is so powerful that it affects every cell in your body. Every cell in your body. When you look at one cell in your body, ask yourself what makes the cell work. What makes a cell in your body work? Do you know what makes one individual little cell work? Harmony and cooperation. That's how cells work. An individual cell. If what's inside that cell, the electrons, the neutrons, and the protons, and all that physics stuff that's inside one, if any of them get out of whack and start not cooperating or not working in harmony, what happens to the cells around it? They're affected in some way, aren't they? When one individual cell is affected in a negative way, that is, when it loses its harmony, when it loses its cooperation, then it affects negatively those cells around it. And that's the disease, all right? And that spreads to another cell and to another cell. And before long, the harmony within you is, physiologically, is destroyed. There's two kinds of energy, supposedly, in every cell. One is the physics energy. Shirley MacLaine talks about this in her wonderful book, Out on a Limb. I recommend you read it. She talks about the physics of what is energy within one cell. And then that there's another kind of energy within a cell that scientists and physicists and chemists, none of us can figure out what it is, but it is what makes the whole thing work. They just call it the source. And that source, the nearest they can get to is love, or cooperation or harmony, what we call love, which is just love. It's just cooperating and being in harmony with. All right? That's what love is. And that is what makes every single cell work. And when one doesn't work right, it affects the other cells. Now, for a minute, just for a minute, think of yourself as a cell, just as one big cell, okay? Now, one of us as a cell goes out of whack, goes amok, doesn't work right in some way. Does it affect those around us? One cell gone wrong can affect all the other cells around us. It's just a growth process, seeing bigger and bigger cells. But when you think about the entire size of our universe, which is endless, which we can't even begin to comprehend what endless means, and uncaused causes and so on, then you are as big as one of those tiny little cells inside of you. And if you go amok in some way, then you affect those around you. And if our planet, which is just another cell in billions and billions and billions of other cells, if our whole planet goes amok, that is, if we store up enough weapons and we do enough killing and we have enough hate, and as a people we do that, then we will not only affect everything down to that tiny little cell, but all the cells in our planet, in our universe, and it will go on forever. See, I have taken to sending out ICUS, a copy of my parable. I send these books out to all influential people in the world in every field. Just the last 2 weeks, I think our mailing lists have totaled over 4,000 at my own expense, just signing them and sending them out to all the government leaders, all the medical leaders, all education leaders, all people in celebrity status, all people associated with different religions and so on. I'm just sending them out. All right? Now, many times when you send things out in the mail to a large mailing list, you get some back. Karma. Understanding how our universe works. In every single obstacle that you run into in your life, there's an opportunity. Every obstacle you have is a hidden opportunity. And seeing it, rather than as something to complain about or call your lawyer about or get upset about or anything in between, you see there is an opportunity in every setback you have in life, including everything you're suffering from right now. Everything, whatever it may be. There's an opportunity in it. Look for the opportunity. Look for the fulfillment, the potential for finding out what you're made out of, rather than for finding out how well you can say, see? I told you things weren't going to work out for me. So in sending out these books, I'll get 100 back. You send out 4,000, you get 100 back, that's a good day. Okay? Only 100 came back. Now, most people who send things out free and get some back say, well, this isn't working, I'm getting these back, I get 100 back and all that. To me, it's like, how can I find that person? This is a test. To me, that's a test from the universe to say, what are you made of? You're just going to give up and not find that person? Or are you going to go look for that person, because that's to find out what you're made out of. And that's what I do with all of that, and have always done. And somehow just knew to do that. When it's somebody says no, it's how can I figure out a way to go around that no? Rather than I think that they're right, I'll just give up. It's always how can I get around that.
If you don't accept yourself, nothing else, no one else is either. You know, it's like, I think of it as like we're all creations of God. We all come from the same place. You know, T.S. Eliot said that we shall not cease from exploration, but at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time. And he was speaking about death, and I don't take that as an explanation of death. I take that as an explanation of an understanding that we all emerged from this place, the same place, that we're all connected. Everything in this universe is connected. Larry Dossey has just written a beautiful book called One Mind, and I've just finished reading it, and it's like showing scientifically how everything is connected to everything in this universe, and you can't take anything and not see the connection to it, especially at the quantum level. So that So you, who you are, is a creation of God. You know, in my book Wishes Fulfilled, I talk about, it's like one of the things you have to recognize is that your highest self is God. You must be like what you came from. So a little tiny spark of who you are is is the Tao, is God, is divine mind, is Krishna, is consciousness, is Buddha, whatever you want to call it. And the Tao, the opening line of the Tao says, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. We can't find a name for it. It's just like, but it's the best name we can come for it is something called love. It's just love. It's divine love. And so this is what you came from. So if you don't accept yourself, you're not accepting something that is the creation of God. Because truly, I mean, it's like the greatest wisdom that you can have is the recognition that you are a piece of this divinity. And I walk around with just Rumi said, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. I'm just in a state of bewilderment about it all. And when you accept yourself, you love yourself. And when you love yourself, that's what you have to give away. And the only thing that you can give away, and that's what a saint is, someone who can only give love away, because that's all they have inside. That's been my goal in my life, is to have no enemies, to have nothing, and particularly not to make an enemy of myself. To love everything about myself. And while I was going through the last 6 months of this pain, the stuff we tapped on down in Australia and so on, most of the time, and you've heard me say it many times, say there's a lesson in this for me. And I just did a public television special, another public television special. And when I got an hour and a half before the show to start, I got one of these attacks again in the neck, and I was just like, how am I going to get through this thing and so on. And I said a prayer. My wife was there, 2 of my girls were there, we were in the room, I had my arms around them, and I said, if I'm supposed to endure this pain, for whatever reason that I don't even understand yet, I'm willing to do it. But could I please just have the next couple of hours so that I could at least get through this experience? And it just dissolved. And I was able, you were there, you were in the audience, and I was able to go out there and do it. And then the pain returned the next day, and I went right back to that state, and I still do it now. And I can feel it even now as we're talking about it a little bit here. And instead of cursing it, instead of being angry at it, I accept it as my dharma. This is, and whatever it is that I have to learn from it, generally speaking, every difficulty I've had in my life, getting divorced, literally being someone who is addicted to substances, including alcohol, letting go of those kinds of beliefs that those are terrible things that I should be ashamed of. They've been amongst my greatest teachers. And this pain is just another one of those things. And generally speaking, I now can go out and help people who live in chronic pain. And you do a lot of this with your tapping. I've seen you do it on stage, with people. In fact, when we were out in Australia, that one woman, what was it? She couldn't even...
Well, there's one lady with a frozen shoulder who couldn't move her arm.
Hadn't been able to move her arm in years.
In 20 minutes, she got it up like that.
So it's like, and that comes from just accepting yourself, and actually instead of cursing the pain, because when you curse the pain and get angry at it, you get angry. Every cell of your being goes through that same anger, and what you want to do is just get to that peaceful place within yourself where you say, when you trust in yourself, you're really trusting in the wisdom that created you, and the wisdom that created you is infinite, and it's formless. And so your thoughts are in that same category. Have thoughts that are aligned with that divine presence. You'll see it going away.
Quote from A Course in Miracles. The memory of God comes to the quiet mind. It cannot come where there is conflict. For a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness. What you remember is a part of you, for you must be as God created you. Let all this madness be undone for you, and turn in peace to the remembrance of God, still shining in your quiet mind. It's about remembering our origination. I committed this passage to memory many years ago, and I use it as a way to remember who I truly am and where I really came from, particularly when I communicate with my Creator, to stay on purpose and in spirit. Now I'd like to go through each of the messages in this observation from A Course in Miracles one by one. Number 1, the memory of God comes to the quiet mind. We came from a quiet, peaceful place. That's the very essence of creation. So when our mind is filled with noisy dialogue, we shut out the possibility of remembering our spirit. Incessant chatter keeps us attached to the physical world and produces anxiety, stress, fear, worry, and so many of the emotional reactions that are decidedly removed from God realization. We must minimize distractions when we wish to communicate with God. So being in nature, away from the artificial noises that invade our space, is helpful. But the most important thing to consider is how to keep our mind free from the dizzying, bewildering cascade of thoughts flowing through our head from morning till night, and even on into our dream state. It's been estimated that we have something like 60,000 separate thoughts every day. The real problem is that we have the same 60,000 thoughts today that we had yesterday. I've made the practice of meditation a part of my daily life because it's one way to quiet the mind so that the memory of God is accessible. So by learning to meditate, or at the very least shutting down the inner dialogue produced, directed, and acted upon by your ego, you can open up a space for remembering and returning to spirit. 2. It cannot come where there is conflict. In order for conflict to exist, there must be two opposing forces at work. That is, one force, in the form of an idea, a point of view, a desire, or a contribution, directly clashes with another. Conflict defines our lives in many ways, as we oppose our partners, our children, our bosses, our neighbors, and even our countries. In politics, it's always one party versus the other. And the entertainment industry portrays battling points of view that are usually turned into violent scenes. Essentially, conflict requires two-ness. However, remembering where we came from involves our returning to the oneness of being in spirit. After all, there are no battling powers in the divine realm of spirit. There's only perfect oneness. And this is what we want to rejoin. We want to become one again with our Creator. And we can't retrieve this memory of God with a mind in conflict in any way. 3. For a mind at war against itself remembers not eternal gentleness. The second part of this teaching from A Course in Miracles reinforces that a combative mind cannot remember where it once resided in eternal gentleness. Obviously, you can't wage war and simultaneously focus on peace and gentleness, and it is eternal gentleness that you want to remember and rejoin. It's really quite simple to do this. Just close down the battlefield and surrender. Remove all of the artillery, send the soldiers home, and replace the instruments of war in your mind with thoughts of peace, tranquility, and surrender. Making your mind a place of peace is achieved by your own will, so steadfastly refusing to have thoughts of conflict allows you to activate the glory of remembering your spirit. 4. The fourth part of this quote. What you remember is a part of you. Every memory I have is me. What a glorious feeling it is to know this. We each have the power to retrieve any piece of ourselves that we desire and to experience it right here, right now, in this present moment. The great Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard once observed that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. In other words, if we can't go back and remember the spiritual bliss that defined us before the beginning, we've really abandoned a part of ourselves. As we move into communion with God, we must know that our inability to remember our spiritual origins is another way of really saying, quote, I'm unable to know myself because I have no recollection or memory of my spirit. Unquote. In fact, the corollary of this line from A Course in Miracles that we're processing right now would be, what you don't remember is not a part of you. In other words, if we fail to remember spirit, then obviously it isn't a part of us. And 5, for you must be as God created you. As you communicate with your source of being, know that you're awakening a part of yourself that's just like God. In fact, you ought to try to approach communication with God by being as closely aligned to the way that you were created as possible. That is, by becoming a vibrational match to the all-loving Creator. Come to the quiet moments in consultation with God in love, in peace, and without judgment. As A Course in Miracles is saying, you must be as you were created. So why put on a false mask and pretend to be anything or anyone else? In this way, you can open the channel of communication because you finally remembered to be the way you were created. And that's the key to effective prayer. And as Gandhi once said, prayer is not an old woman's idle amusement. Properly understood and applied, it's the most potent instrument of action. And 6, let all this madness be undone for you, and turn in peace to the remembrance of God still shining in your quiet mind. Let's take the 3 suggestions in this teaching one at a time. First, A Course says, let this madness be undone. The madness here is that of living in a state of conflict. In other words, we must make an attempt to transcend the dichotomies of our life because the division creates so much suffering and keeps us from living an inspired life. I remember a Ram Dass lecture in which he said, "I firmly come to the conclusion that there are no thems for me anymore. I can't be told who to hate, who to fight, who to subdue. I only see an us in my heart." All those messages to divvy up our world are insane. All our self-centeredness just drives our ego's insatiable appetite for making us special and putting other people down. The Course encourages us to be done with this madness once and for all, both in our minds and in our actions. And second, we're told to turn in peace to the remembrance of God. Once again, we know in our heart that we came from a place of peace. So any discord can't be the result of our Creator's actions. God cannot come to us when we pray from non-peace, so the solution is to return to the remembrance of Him and ask to be made an instrument of His peace. When I find myself out of sorts, I remember. And what I remember is to turn to peace right now in prayer. I become peace rather than anguish, and I feel the calmness I long for come over me like a wave of pleasurable relief. The most important thing that you will gain from cultivating unconditional love will be freedom from hate and violence. When these thoughts are removed, you discover the presence of joy and peace. This is an automatic reaction to unconditional love because you are in harmony with the creative source. The ego identifies you primarily as a physical body, separate from God, and in need of constant stroking to massage your self-importance. When you simply say this is an illusion and it doesn't really exist, those ideas are replaced with unconditional love, and the joy you experience is really the denial of the false and an affirmation of the truth of your being. You are absolutely free when you are not consumed with your self-importance. You are free when you no longer need to be stroked, coddled, and approved of by everyone you meet. There is a great sense of joy in feeling free. Think of times when you have felt the freest in your life, when the pressures to perform are off, when you are walking in nature, when you are in solitude and communing with God. Joy, freedom, and unconditional love are inseparable. They flow from the experience of each other. To be joyful is to hold on to nothing and to have no restrictions. This is also the feeling of freedom, and it is a result of embracing the unconditional love of the divine energy that is the center of your being. This is not to say that one ought not to enjoy a massage, a delicious meal, lovemaking, and all of the pleasures of the body, but it is the mind that is processing and allowing you to experience the pleasure. It is the mind that makes it real. Your purpose is to align your mind with the unconditional love that is the divine source of all material things, including your body. With that alignment comes joy and power. When one drop of water separates from the ocean, it becomes a speck that is essentially powerless and weak. But when it aligns with its source, the ocean itself, it is powerful beyond what is possible as an individual drop of ocean, and so it is with you. It's a difficult thing for our egos to contemplate this concept of oneness. Unconditional love and becoming a co-creator in your life is possible when you know that God is not separate from you. You and God are one and the same. In the New Testament, Jesus says to the multitudes, "I have said, ye are gods." And later, "When a man believes in me, he does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. When he looks at me, he sees the one who sent me." One of the great meditation exercises that I learned many years ago involves imagining lifting yourself out of your body and floating into space so far that you are actually observing the entire planet. If you do this, try to imagine what the Earth is like without you on it. It is a very difficult task for your ego to even contemplate the world without you on it. Next, begin to observe the planet without any judgment, refusing to label anything good or bad, right or wrong. Simply instruct yourself to notice, allow, and send unconditional love. The process of being a detached observer occurs in the silence of your contemplations or meditations. Begin by seeking out time to be quiet and enter this inner place of love. It is in that silence that you will come to truly know the divine energy of unconditional love. Remember to keep uppermost in mind that love transforms. Unconditional love heals the body and the mind. And then also remember that the polarity of love is fear. Fear is a current of energy that literally runs through your body and is produced when you feel cut off from the source of unconditional love. Every time you experience fear, ask yourself, what's going on that I have substituted fear for love in this moment? Also, begin to acquire a private, non-publicized, and regular habit of meditating. With every breath you take, feel yourself taking in unconditional love. With every exhalation, expel thoughts of fear. Then pick one day to practice this exercise with a partner of your choice. Make a decision to think, act, and radiate nothing but unconditional love for the entire 24-hour period, including your dreams. If this works for you for one day, see if you can extend it for another day or two. Also, try making a decision to turn over your most difficult challenges in the area of unconditional love to God. Simply turn them over with a request such as, I have been unable to bring love into my life in these areas, and I am asking for your divine guidance in accomplishing this. Also, in your silent moments of prayer, do not be afraid to ask for help. And then know the connection between manifesting your heart's desire and unconditional love. Without your connection to this love, you lose your connection to the creative process. Unconditional love is in all things you wish to attract as well as in you. Keep it honestly, and you keep your ability to know that you are a God. Lose it, and you lose your godliness. It is that simple. It is with unconditional love that you find your true connection to the divine energy that is in all things. Your desire to be and live from greatness is an aspect of your spiritual energy. In order to create balance in this area of your life, you have to use the energy of your thoughts to harmonize with what you desire. Your mental energy attracts what you think about. Thoughts that pay homage to frustration will attract frustration. When you say or think anything resembling, there's nothing I can do, my life is spun out of control and I'm trapped, that's what you'll attract. That is, resistance to your highest desires. Every thought of frustration is like purchasing a ticket for more frustration. Every thought that agrees that you're stuck is asking the universe to send you even more of that glue to keep you stuck. The single most important tool to being in balance is knowing that you and you alone are responsible for the imbalance between what you dream your life is meant to be and the daily habits that drain life from that dream. You can create a new alignment with your mental energy and instruct the universe to send opportunities to correct this imbalance. When you do so, you discover that while the world of reality has its limits, the world of your imagination is without boundaries. Out of this boundless imagination comes the seedlings of a reality that's been crying out to be restored to a balanced environment. Restoring the balance. The objective of this principle is to create a balance between dreams and habits. The least complicated way to begin is to recognize the signs of habitual ways of being and then learn to shift your thinking to being in balance with your dreams. So what are your dreams? What is it that lives within you that never ever has gone away? What inner nightlight continues to glow even if it's only a glimmer in your thoughts and dreams? Whatever it is, however absurd it may seem to others, if you want to restore the balance between your dreams and your habits, you need to make a shift in the energy that you're contributing to your dreams. If you're out of balance, it's primarily because you've energetically allowed your habits to define your life. Those habits and the consequences thereof are the result of the energy you've given them. In the early stages of the rebalancing process, concentrate on this awareness. You get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Commit to thinking about what you want rather than how impossible or difficult that dream may seem. Give your personal dreams a place to hang out on the balance scale so that you can see them in your imagination and they can soak up the energy they deserve. Thoughts are mental energy. They're the currency that you have to attract what you desire. You must learn to stop spending that currency on thoughts you don't want, even though you may feel compelled to continue your habitual behavior. Your body might continue for a while to stay where it's been trained to be, but meanwhile, thoughts are being aligned with your dreams. The esteemed 19th century writer Louisa May Alcott phrases this idea in an encouraging and an inspiring manner. She says, quote, "Far away in the sunshine are my highest inspirations. I may not reach them, but I can look up and see the beauty, believe in them, and try to follow where they lead." Choosing to restore a semblance of balance between your dreams and your habits seems possible with Miss Alcott's phrases in mind. Look up and see, and believe in them. The words bring to life an energetic alignment. Rather than putting your thoughts on what is or what you've habitually thought for a lifetime, you shift to looking up and seeing and firmly believing in what you see. When you begin to think in this manner, the universe conspires to work with you and sends you precisely what you're thinking and believing. It doesn't always happen instantaneously, but once the realignment is initiated in your thoughts, you've begun being in balance. The habit of thinking in alignment with your dreams. Oscar Wilde once observed that we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. This is a perfect example of what it means to align your vision and thoughts so that they're balanced with what you sense you're here to be. A thought such as, "It is my intention to create a place to help underprivileged children," is in reality a message to the universe. If you feel strongly that you came here for a particular purpose, then you should cultivate energy to match this dream. It doesn't matter what the circumstances of your life are. Your current financial status is unimportant when it comes to your pursuit of this purpose. The presence of a gaggle of naysayers shouldn't sway you or make you doubt your attraction to your calling. What you're doing as you get your life balanced with your dream is beginning to co-create your life. Co-creation is cooperatively using the energy from the invisible field of spirit. It is perfectly balancing your in-the-world calling with the pure energy of creation. You emulate this creation field by being as much like it as possible. This involves your willingness to contemplate yourself as a being of balance, attracting the conditions you desire to produce. It is in the contemplation of this power that you actually acquire this power. I'm going to re-say that. It is in the contemplation of this power that you actually acquire this power. Listen to this statement until it sticks with you like superglue. You cannot manifest a place for helping underprivileged children by contemplating the impossibility of that happening. Even if you're in the gutter, you have the option of looking at the stars. This means thinking star thoughts and rejecting the weight of those that attract the gutter. Your balance point is a certainty that you affirm with thoughts along the lines of, "I know it, I desire it, it's on its way, nothing can stop it, and there's nothing for me to be upset about." This alignment will completely turn your world around. The universe is based on a law of attraction. You begin seeing the universe conspiring with you to attract the right people, the right finances, and the seemingly synchronistic events to turn your dreams into reality here and now. When you're balanced with thoughts of deserving this cooperation from the world of spirit, you actively engage in bringing it about. You're enjoying the lightness of being in balance with the creative energy of life. It's no longer possible to sit around complaining or feeling frustrated. You are energized. Why? Because you're balanced with the source of all creation. And just like it, you access creativity by attracting all that you need with your thoughts. It just doesn't work if you're in a state of imbalance, complaining, living in fear, or expecting the worst. The same logic of realignment for balancing your dream energy with your daily habits applies to anything you're capable of imagining. Writing and producing your own music album, training horses, adopting a child from an impoverished land, owning your own home in the country, landing the job that's always eluded you, making the kind of money that will free you from debt, running a marathon, you name it. And if you can dream it, you can achieve it. But only if you align your inner creative energy, your thoughts, so that they match up perfectly with your desires. Thoughts that reinforce current habits that are incongruous with your desire must be replaced with aligned energy. No one has said it better than Jesus of Nazareth. Believe that you shall receive, and you shall receive. What's the point of living a life disputing such imbalanced wisdom?